Hello, everybody. This is Brian Dollar. I'm concerned that wildfires are not only destroying 7 million acres of land every year in the United States, they're also destroying a lot of land corners. So I have an idea to mitigate some of that harm. My presentation is titled Using Coordinates to Preserve U.S. Public Land Survey Corners. The consensus is that wildfires are getting worse, and it's based on scientific research. When you compare research about the scope of wildfires and the change over historical period, you have to be careful about what metrics are used. Some of the best metrics are just the millions of acres that are burned. And it's also important to consider the lives lost and the property destroyed, of course. That has the largest effect. And firefighters and land managers have a really important perspective. And here's a top 10 list from fire chiefs. If you look at this, 4 out of the 10 worst fires on that list happened in California since 2018. And I spent the summer of 2021 marking national forest boundaries within the Dixie Fire. And here I included a Wikipedia article about the Dixie Fire, and it was an enormous fire in Butte, Plumas, Lassen, Shasta, and Tehama counties. It burned 963,309 acres before it was contained in October 25th. It's the largest single fire, in other words, non-complex wildfire recorded in California history, and the second largest wildfire overall after the August complex of 2020. And the fire damaged or destroyed several small towns, including Greenville, Canyon Dam, and Warner Valley. Of course, smoke from the Dixie Fire affected air quality all over the West, and it was the most expensive wildfire in terms of suppression efforts in the United States history. It cost $637.4 million to fight it. And here's a picture I took. Some monuments survived the Dixie Fire. Most bearing and line trees did not. Most signs and posts melted into little puddles of silver metal. You can still find some of the carcinite posts that mark the line. It's the fiberglass itself melted, but the little stringy glass carbon fibers or whatever they are just still there. And if you dig around, you can sometimes find where the post went in the ground. Aluminum completely melted. Some steel melted. Nearly all the dead and burnt timber, including witness trees, will be removed by salvage logging operations. And this is a picture of a 40-acre piece where the feller bunchers have come in and they've stacked up all of the dead and burned trees into piles ready for logging trucks to haul them off to the mill. And the loss of the survey marks is obviously not the most tragic part of catastrophic wildfires. And I know this. I was in Shasta County when the Camp Fire killed 85 people, and the Carr Fire burned right up to the city limits of Redding. I lived in Humboldt County when the August Complex Fire burned 1 million acres. I worked in the Forest Service in California during the 2020 fire season and during the Dixie Fire. I was working north of Dixie Fire by Bernie, but I was in the smoke every day. The truth is that the greatest tragedy of wildfires is the loss of life and property. Nonetheless, we as surveyors have a duty to mitigate the harm that lies within our realm of professional practice. And remember this, wildfire is not the only climate-driven cause of survey mark destruction. Hurricanes and floods also destroy survey marks. So, the loss of the boundary marks and reduction in staff is creating a future crisis. We can't continue to do things. Oh, wait a minute. I think I skipped a slide. Move back here. Can I move back? I skipped a slide that showed that a lot of our boundary marks are based on trees, bearing trees, line trees, and so forth, and all those trees burn up. So we can't continue to do things the same old-fashioned way. We need a new way of marking forest boundaries that's more fire resilient and less work intensive. And I think that developments in land surveying technology and knowledge allow us to transition to a new era. I believe that boundary surveyors need to transition to network-based coordinates in a manner similar to what geodetic surveyors have done. Here I got a video from the NGS that explains.
When beginning most surveying and mapping projects, you are trying to find the coordinates of an unknown point or points, so you need to start at a place where the coordinates are known. Such starting points are called your project control. Using project control that has coordinates from the National Spatial Reference System, or the NSRS, ensures consistency with other surveys and maps that also use the NSRS, so that when maps are created, property boundaries determined, and roads planned, everything matches up. For decades, surveyors relied primarily on passive control marks to tie into the NSRS. Passive control marks are usually some physical object, often a metal disc or rod installed in the ground. They are called passive because they can't alert you to their movement, and their coordinates may not be checked and updated for years or even decades. Over 800,000 passive control marks were set across the country, generally by the federal government, to build the NSRS. Over the years, however, many marks have been disturbed, damaged, or destroyed. The coordinates for many others are no longer valid due to earthquakes, subsidence, or other crustal motion. For these reasons, you should always check a mark's coordinates before using it as control, and there may not even be a valid mark in your area of interest. Today, instead of marks in the ground, people are using permanently installed Global Positioning System, GPS, and other Global Navigation Satellite Systems, GNSS, receivers as active control. These receivers are called active because they are always collecting satellite information which tells us if they have moved, and if so, how much. You can utilize active control by accessing data from a nationwide network of continuously operating GPS reference stations, or cores, to compute an up-to-date position in the NSRS. Cores act as your known points to help you establish coordinates on unknown points. Each cores includes a highly accurate receiver that constantly collects radio signals broadcast by GPS and other GNSS satellites, allowing the coordinates to remain up to date. NOAA works with many partners to manage a network of several thousand cores, which are located in secure areas to ensure their longevity. Cores coordinates, accessed via the internet, are validated daily and updated in the event of land movement. This is a very different approach than passive control, where coordinates may not be checked for years. Using passive control requires you to start your survey from an existing physical point, which you must find and occupy with surveying equipment. Conversely, users have no need to physically visit a core site, and in fact can use cores from hundreds of kilometers away from their survey site. While passive control marks will continue to play an important role in the mapping community, making use of cores and GPS allows you to keep up with this dynamic and changing world and start your survey almost anywhere.
Okay, the surveyors have not traditionally been fond of coordinates and have not trusted coordinates. Surveyors have been taught and have experience with trusting monuments. And so historically, if you look at the Land Act of March 1st, 1800, that was the beginning of the idea that corners set by the original surveyors in the field are held as true corners, whether they were placed correctly or not. And the BLM manuals over the years and their restoration instructions have said the same thing. Public lands, when approved and accepted, are unchangeable. Original corners are correct, whether shown in the position shown by the field notes or not. Those are things that we know. They come from the Surveyor's Bible, the BLM Manual of Instructions, and also our textbooks that we study in legal aspects classes as surveyors. The Curtis Brown Boundary Control and Legal Principles standard textbook. We sort of have it drilled into us that monuments are king, and in the order of conflicting elements of deed description, monuments first, then distance and direction. Of course, those are reversed in some cases, and then area at the bottom of the list, coordinates. With these rebuttable presumptions, but the idea is that coordinates are created from distance and direction, and they're not reliable. That's the idea, and the most reliable would be a monument. But the BLM manual has been revised in 2009, and coordinates have been upgraded as a tool for restoration. If the monument is found and the coordinates of the monument are precisely determined by an acceptable method, then the monument is later lost. Oh, this is Brown. What am I talking about? Okay, yeah. So if you read Brown, also in section 427, uh, coordinates, if a monument is found and the coordinates of the monument are precisely determined by an acceptable method, and then the monument is later lost, the coordinates so established will probably form the best available means of reestablishing the former position. So always remember, the original corner was correct in the location, and if it's gone, the surveyor must put it back where it was. If using coordinates assists you in the goal, then use them. Um, Reliably creating accurate coordinates requires skill and determination. For if you're using RTK in under the canopy, you need to be careful because you can get bad fixes due to multipath. And always use the BLM RTK approved RTK procedure, which is basically 15 minutes observation, wait 15 minutes, and do another 15 minutes observation. That's for a single measurement. So really, you need to do two of those if you're going to record an accurate location, a reliable, tested location for a corner. Opus doesn't work in the woods. Forget about it. DPost works, and most post-processing software will work. But it takes time to develop the skills and the office in the field to be proficient in the woods using GPS. And the multi-constellation GNSS receivers are mandatory under the canopy. GPS only receivers or GPS only course stations don't work as well. Preserve your work where future surveyors can find it in standard corner and plat records. We need to leave future surveyors an easy way to find our evidence, and we need to make the evidence persuasive. Put yourself in the shoes of a land surveyor 50 years from now. What information would you need, and what additional information would inspire your confidence? What coordinate evidence would you trust? To persuade, you need to show your work in detail and include redundant measurements. This shows a standard state promulgated corner form required to be filed in Missouri. And in the front of the form, you list historical record, what you find, and there's a place for coordinates on here. And then on the second page, a lot of times people put a sketch. And you can still put a sketch and put your GPS readings and calculations on there. So that when you record this corner form, surveyors will find it, and they'll have that information available, and they'll be persuaded by your work if you show it in good enough detail. And so here's what I'm saying. I'm complete the front of the corner form as usual and include state plane coordinates. On the back of the form, include detailed information about two post-process static or rapid static occupations. Include the date, time of both observations, detailed information about epoch and Earth model, and include the location and name of the course stations used and vectors measured from them. If you include all that information, you'll leave a lasting legacy and remain useful for many years. So here's what that looks like on the back of the form. Two independently measured and reduced static or rapid static observations are persuasive evidence of corner location. Show your work and help build a better public land survey system. And edit, just all you have to do is edit the output files from post-processing and insert them on the back of the corner form in the text files. And the goal is not to locate all the section and quarter section corners in a region using National Spatial Reference System. That'd take too much time. The idea is to measure accurate coordinates to key original corners while those corners can still be found after a fire. Then we leverage those corner locations using GCDB, modern BLM resurveys, and other reliable modern surveys to create a network of sub-meter corner locations. And these locations save us in coming decades. We'll be looking for corners and surveying the woods when those woods have no more bearing or line trees available for us to use. Thank you. And I wish I was in Calgary, but I couldn't make it.